Hi, Godzo Medicine, PlayStation, Medic Maniac, YouTube, and I'm on Gran Turismo 7 on my PS5 once again. And I've been making a few videos just talking about stuff because I've been looking at things on the internet recently and thinking about driving games, and GT7 itself gives me a lot to think about with driving games because I think it's so poor. I had an idea about something that I said for upgrades and engines and stuff, and I'd previously talked about buying upgrades and trying to optimize builds, and the fact that you don't get a try before you buy system, nor do you get a test track or anything else like that. So it meant that when you bought upgrades for engines, if you wanted to try a different build, you couldn't keep the parts that you bought and swap in and out. You had to buy the new engine, which would wipe out your previous upgrades. And I said a try before you buy system would be, a good thing. And I thought, well, why don't you, right? Because the argument came up about, it aping real life, and I thought, well, I was a bit inspired by that, and I thought, well, if it really was real life, and this, by the way, just shows that it isn't aping real life, because if I had an engine in a car, right, because I've actually helped someone put a new engine in a car, and what happened to their old engine when we took it out was they still had it. That's unbelievable, that, isn't it? In real life, when we took an engine out of a car, they still had their old engine when they put the new one in. That's unreal, isn't it? Imagine that. Imagine if Gran Turismo was a bit like real life, and your credits that you spent on your new engine meant that you kept your old one with the upgrades on that, and then you could put different upgrades on your new engine and try the two engines, and you kept your engines. So if you bought five engines, you kept all your other ones. So you could essentially try different builds and swap in and out the different engines that you had with the different upgrades on them, just like you might do if you had a big garage and you did things like that in the real world. Imagine that. Imagine. But further proof that Gran Turismo does not ape real life with modifications and upgrades, because what it does is it trashes your engine that you bought in your car, so you spend credits in the game and it wipes them out completely, which is further to my argument that I presented, that in fact these are detrimental design choices to what the game should actually be about. I mean, here we're in an upgrade shop because the game is about players upgrading their cars, and yet the design choices are proving to be detrimental to that gameplay design. To the original, well, let the players upgrade their cars. So anyway, that was my flash of inspiration. Well, why don't we just keep our old engines and the upgrades that we put on those engines? Imagine that. Wow. Do you think I could be a game designer and get paid the big bucks then, with these ideas and stuff? I mean, how much do these people get paid to make such poor choices, really? You have to wonder about that. Okay, so one of the other things that I was thinking about, and I've mentioned this before, so I've talked about the passion. The passion has gone out the games, and nobody's helping players who are passionate about motorsport and buy a game like this. Nobody's helping them to understand how to set up a car. Some people might have an idea. One of the things that I found when I was on the Forza Motorsport forums was that there was actually people who did work in racing, and they were trying real world setups, you know, with roll bars and caster and toe and all this sort of stuff, and they didn't work in Forza Motorsport because Forza Motorsport was a video game and it did not replicate real world settings. So what was happening then was there were many people, and myself included here, we were all trying to understand what the developers had done with the maths and how it affected physics and handling models and stuff by altering different bits. I've spoken about this before in another video. I had quite a long and arduous journey into getting an understanding of the actual everything encompassing tuning and building for my forward wheel drive, all wheel drive and rear wheel drive cars. But there was obviously nothing definitive because there was no input at all from Turn 10 Studios in the game other than if you tighten up the front roll bars, then it does this, and if you slacken up the front roll bars, it does this, and changing this does this, and changing that does that. That's great, but if I wanted to understand how to set up a suspension based upon the front rear weight distribution of the car, how would I go about understanding the sprung and unsprung weight when I'm trying to calculate that from your stock settings? Where's the maths of what you've done with your model, your settings model? Can you please help me out to understand that so I can calculate it more accurately when I make my builds? And there's just no input, so you're effectively playing it by ear. It's trial and error, it's guesswork, and there will be no definitive answer because those are held tightly, probably locked under lock and key and with tight security in a developer's office, and they won't share it with the player base. They refuse to share it with the player base. I've never worked in the racing communities at all, so I don't understand how to read telemetry. I'm a motorsport fan. I've been to watch races. I've been a Johnny Herbert fan club member back in the day. I've, religiously videotaped entire seasons of racing and stuff like that, and watched many videos and got books and, built model cars and collected model cars and all of that. But I don't understand telemetry. And no video game that I've ever bought has taught me or helped me to understand telemetry, and I find that bizarre. I am at a loss as to why developers make video games for motorsport, for an audience that loves motorsport, and it doesn't help them make the most out of their product. So one of the things I wanted to talk about right here is, if we get a community who's impassioned about motorsport, who loves motorsport, who buys a game like this, when they try and figure out what the hell the developers have done with the maths in their settings model, and they try and alter things for particular tracks, because settings will vary from car to car, drivetrain to drivetrain, weight distribution to weight distribution, and track to track, right? The tire pressure of your tires will vary on track temperature and other factors to do with, and your camber settings, off camber turns or whatever. So there will be specific settings for specific tracks, okay? And what we don't get, we get a very sterile screen here where we adjust numbers and we can't feel what that is, because no one foresaw that we might actually want to test our cars round a track while we're tweaking settings to see what they do. Not only don't they want us to teach us how their maths model for the settings work, not only don't they want us to teach us what telemetry is and how to understand it accurately when we try and look for some telemetry, but they don't want to give us an option to test our cars while we're adjusting settings and reading telemetry, so we can understand what we're doing when we adjust the numbers. It's like they wanted to make a game for motorsport fans and they couldn't give a damn. That they had no passion about whether their community was impassioned about their game. They couldn't give a damn. They gave sterile screams like this. Well, that's really helpful. Thanks, Polyphony. Thank you. And it's not just Polyphony. There are other developers who have made racing games with a similarly sterile experience, and they've just, it's like they've sucked all the motorsport passion out of their product. And you have to wonder why. Why? Because I don't know. I can't answer you. I don't know why. So if this gets to Polyphony, perhaps they'd like to comment in my video as to why they sucked the passion out of it and why they don't want to teach their community how to tune cars. Because I can guarantee you this, if any developer made a racing game and they did put that passion in it and they did want to teach their community would love it. There would be more and more people wanting to get into car games because they can actually bloody understand the thing. It's amazing that. I know that might be sort of like really off the wall. Hey, I'm being a bit wild and off the wall. But, you know, that might actually work. Just throwing it out there. So, yeah, being able to test your car and to set it up on any track available in the game would be good, because you know what drivers do, like Graham Hill did with his settings for Monaco. He set up his cars when he won Monaco 5 times, Mr. Monaco, specifically for Monaco. And then when he went to other tracks, he set his cars up for the other tracks, and they were individual settings for individual tracks. That's a bit wild, isn't it? Isn't that wild? So if we could actually have motorsport games with features that were tailored to people who love motorsport and impassioned about motorsport and were helped to understand how to set up their cars, they might be impassioned to set cars up for individual tracks. Wild, isn't it? Isn't that wild? Wow. And then a lot more people would get a lot more fun out of the game. That's a bit wild as well. So wow. So yeah. While I thought of it, I just thought I'd better get all that down into my video so it can go out there and other people can hear these really wild suggestions. Oh, I'm so crazy. Take care.